Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Campbell, and I'm here with Carlin Crow with the Iowa DD Council. And welcome to our September chat, Capital Chat. I can't believe it's almost October. I almost said October. But we wanted to talk a little bit about a slide about that thing that's happening in about 5 weeks, the election. And then we're going to talk some about employment because beginning next month is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So we wanted to talk some about the things that are going on there. Plus, we have a lot to let you know about on your calendars, to mark your calendars for next year. So we'll get started right now. I'm going to just go through a few slides on the election. If I can get I'm working on 2 screens here to work around some problems that I'm having. So forgive me if I can't get this started right away. And make sure, is everybody seeing the screen now? Hopefully. Carlin is
Amy, if you can switch the displays, we're still seeing your note version.
Oh, are you? Okay. Well, it's the opposite now. Hey, hold on. Now I don't know how to do it on the big screen. It worked before. I should have just not stopped sharing before. Okay. Try this. Does that work?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know how it looks the same to me, but that's good. So I wanted to remind everybody about voting windows. If you had joined us during the legislative session, you'll have realized that we have had some major changes to our voting laws. And so it's a very, very short window for early mail-in voting. So absentee voting, when you mail in your ballots and it's sent to your home, there's a very short time period to get those turned around. So you can request those mail-in ballots now. You've had a few weeks that you've been able to request those, but you can request them now through October 21st. I would not wait until October 21st because you really don't have much time to get them back. The earliest the auditors will start mailing those out is October 16th. And then those have to be back to the auditor's office, physically in the auditor's office by the end of election day, when the polls close at 8. So it's a really fast turnaround. So it's important, if you are planning to vote early by mail, that you get those ballots back in the mail or return them to your county auditor's office in person as soon as you can to make sure your vote is counted. It's really important not to wait until the last minute on those. But the beginning of early voting is just right around the corner on October 16th. That's when you might see satellite voting sites pop up in places like, I've heard, grocery stores. I know our public library has one. Sometimes it's in a town hall. They'll be around in the community. And you can find out where those are at your county auditor's office. Those are places where you go in like you're going to vote and you get a ballot. It's an absentee ballot, but you get a ballot and you vote it just like you would on election day. It's just a way of voting before election day, because as you know, you never know what's going to happen on election day. I just had a friend tell me that their mother passed away, or brother passed away the night before the election. It was really hard for her to get out and vote on that day with all that was going on. So you just never know what's going to happen on election day. But we wanted to make sure you knew of these options for early voting. There's also the Saturday before the election, auditors' offices will be open for 8 hours. That's on November 2nd. And you can vote at your auditor's office anywhere between October 16th and November 4th during their normal business hours. So lots of options to vote. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that there is a short window. And if you're going to vote by mail from home, you might want to do that as quickly as possible. Get your requests in as soon as possible. Go to the next slide if I can. All right. Well, I wanted to also talk about, we were really excited this year. We have, 4 competitive congressional races in our state. And that's kind of, for those of you that might not know who's running in your area. We've got in the first congressional district, Marionette Miller Meeks and Christina Bohannon. Second is Ashley Hinson and Sarah Corkery. The third is Zach Nunn and Lanon Bacom. And the fourth is Randy Feenstra and Ryan Melton. And so we were really excited this year because this fall InfoNet, like we usually do in a when we have competitive races, we asked the candidates a couple questions about disability related issues. And I'm pleased to say all 8 responded. That's kind of a first for us. Usually we don't have all 8 respond, but they did. Wasn't necessarily always easy to get the response back, but we did get them. And they are in our fall issue. And you can find that if you didn't get it in your inboxes, email inboxes, you can find it on our website there. But also we did send it to the printer. So if you're someone that gets it in printed format, you'll be getting that next week in your mailboxes. But we asked them, we thought it was really important, not just because October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, but we felt like it was really important given what discussions are happening in Congress. The fact that we had some significant bills introduced last year on employment, that we really wanted to make sure employment was a question we asked about. And so we did do a little bit bigger lead up to this question so that we made sure that people understood the situation if they didn't happen to be sitting on some of those committees. But I want to thank Allies and Advocacy, with a group that the DD Council works with that is working on employment issues as well as a talking point. And they really helped us frame the language in our request to talking about how Iowans can work to their full potential, not lose their healthcare coverage and the supportive services they need that makes it possible for them to work, but also earn more and save more by either increasing asset limits or eliminating them, or allowing them to do more of a buy-in to the program so that they can continue to save, work, get married, buy a house, buy a car, save for their kids' futures, like everyone. And so that was one important question. The second, we can never not ask a question about workforce and direct support professionals, because they are so essential to the being for Iowans with disabilities to be able to live in their communities and where they would like to live. And so we did ask that question. Now, given that we only gave them 300 words to respond, so it was short because we were limited in space, but you can kind of get a little bit of a look at what those candidates are thinking when it comes to what their response would be to that issue. So I really encourage you to look at that. This is how they look. I just pulled the first congressional district, since that was the first one, and their answers were a little on the shorter side, so it was easier for me to kind of display it here. So we give a little bit of information about the candidate and where you can find out more. So you can go to their websites to find out more information about them. So I think that I hope you all get a chance to look at that, because I was really excited that they were able to respond that quickly. And I'm going to turn it over to Carlin to talk about some of the candidate forums or disability dialogues that they're hosting with Disability Rights Iowa.
Thanks, Amy, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to tell you about a number of events that we have going on in October. I can't believe how busy October is going to be, and for 2 big reasons. One is the election coming up, and also it's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. And so we'll be talking about both of those things in many of these events. But the candidate forums were actually Disability Rights Iowa is actually the lead sponsor on these. And we're inviting, they kind of separated it by region because, we couldn't get into every district in the state to do some, hyper local candidate forums. So there's one in each kind of region of the state: Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, Southeast. And then there's 3 in the central area because of basically population density here. So the idea is to have all candidates for office for the Iowa legislature were invited, as well as some districts invited their, or some of the forums invited their congressional candidates. But the idea is really to have a dialogue. It's not a debate, but to have constituents meet their candidates that are running and have a dialogue about disability policy. And also there will be information shared on voting there, much like Amy did in her initial slide, with dates and times, but also about your rights as a voter. Because it's something that a lot of people don't realize what's available to them as far as accessibility when you walk into your polling place. So that will also be shared because those are both, that's a big issue for both Disability Rights Iowa and the Iowa DD Council to make sure that voting is accessible for all. And we want to encourage as many people as possible, and especially those with disabilities, to vote, because fewer people with disabilities vote than the general population. So many of these local events are also sponsored by local groups. And we have one additional forum that wasn't, it's not part of Disability Rights Iowa's list, and it's listed on the bottom. That's at Northwestern College in Orange City. And some of you might remember that in past legislative sessions, we've been working on scholarships for students to attend comprehensive transition programs in the state. And one of those programs is at Northwestern College. It's called the NEXT program. And those programs are for students with intellectual disabilities and learning disabilities. And the NEXT program at Northwestern is helping to host this candidate forum along with some traditional students at Northwestern who are involved in, or who have political science majors. So it's a great inclusive event. And they're going to talk about disability policy and also talk about their program there to the candidates. So one thing we want to encourage all of you to do is attend if you possibly can. I just realized yesterday that the first one is also at the same time as the vice presidential debate. So that's kind of a bummer. We didn't know that when this was planned, so hopefully that won't affect attendance too much, but those are both important. That's another important event to watch also. But we have a list of questions that we have prepared for the candidates, and they've been shared with them. They're more general than the two questions that we had asked the congressional candidates. So if you are able to come to these forums, ask specific questions about and tell your story, whether it's about employment, education, healthcare. Being as specific as possible is most important. And in order to keep it on a level that the candidates could have good conversation with, we've made the questions kind of general about disability policy. So we're really hoping that audience members will bring in their personal stories and share and ask great questions. So we have a couple questions. The questions that we posed to the congressional candidates, we also suggest that you ask these to your local candidates, to your candidates for the Iowa legislature, because both of these issues, employment and the DSP workforce shortage and reimbursement rates, are both federal issues and state issues. So both of those governing bodies could address these issues in different ways. And so asking these questions to everybody just elevates the importance of these two issues to the disability community, and also keeps the conversation going, and hopefully we'll start getting some good answers about them. So these are two great questions that you could pose at those forums if you attend. If you don't, we ask that you use these and email them to your candidates for office and your current legislator, and see how they respond. And we would love to hear what you hear back. And I think, Amy, we were going to post them in the chat. Maybe you did already, so that you can just copy and paste them. Obviously the top question, you might want to switch and not have it say Congress. You can just say, how can you ensure islands with disabilities can work to their full potential? And then also tell any story you might have about that too. So these would be two great starter questions. You can also ask your own, but we really encourage you to reach out. This is a great time to reach out to those candidates and pose those questions and get the conversation going. And we can also put their email addresses on our website, which I don't think we have yet, but that can be shared with everyone. I think now, are we moving on to?
Yeah, sorry, my share screen's acting up. I don't know what was going on. So let me start again. There we go.
We also wanted to ask you all if you had questions that you wanted to ask, you would be interested in asking candidates for office, because we can also use those in our forums and in other arenas to make sure that the issues that are important to you are getting asked. So if you want to chime in right now or put them in the chat, we'd be more than happy to hear what your issues of importance are and any questions that you would like to suggest. And Kristen, I see your question there. Why are there any in the Iowa City Sewer Rapids area? Some of the candidate forums, it really depended on who was willing to host it locally. So it just happened that, your area ended up in Waverly because Wartburg College is co-hosting it.
Okay.
So
Waverly is close by.
Waverly is not too close to you, but just happened to be in your area of the state. So apologize
Okay.
for it not being closer.
Well, no, I just I saw Wartburg, but I had no idea where Wartburg was, so it was kind of lost.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up though, too, because there are also some of our advocate groups that are hosting voter training events, and some of them are inviting candidates to their voter training event. And actually the one in Iowa City is on October 9th. And I'll find that time for you and put it in the chat here in a minute, so we have that one also.
Thank you.
Amy, this is Judy. The one in Iowa City will be at 5 p.m., 5 to 7 p.m. at the Coralville Public Library.
Thank you, Judy. Kay, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yes. One thing I had put in the chat, and I saw another person too, have any candidates confirmed their attendance? And then part of that, should we contact the candidates that are in our area and let them know we're going to go and encourage them to attend? But do you have any confirmations from those folks yet?
We do, and unfortunately, I don't have the list. Disability Rights is I was collecting those, so I apologize for that. But yes, just go ahead and email your candidates or your current legislator and encourage them to go, even if they've already signed up. If you just go ahead and encourage them to be there, and hopefully they'll respond and say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be there."
Okay,
that would be awesome.
And then one other thing, in terms of another question or issue, this came up on a social media posting, and I really related to it. Is the idea that folks with lifelong disabilities have to undergo annual assessments, like why at some point, and I understand that's a federal or CMS requirement. And I think we need to start questioning that, particularly for adults. I mean, there was one woman who said, yeah, I'm going to have my evaluation or my assessment, and I'm still a quadriplegic. And my son, at 46 years old, we have his scheduled for next month. And it's not going to tell us anything we don't already know. Now, if we felt like things had changed to where we needed additional support, then we could request one. But this idea that it's part of just standard operating, I think we should start questioning that and link it to the money that's spent on these evaluations. And you would come up with criteria. Clearly, children should be assessed regularly and maybe even into young adulthood, but not for folks, let's just say, I'm going to throw this out. I don't know if that's it, but over 40 or over 50, a developmental disability. And again, if things get worse, you can always request one if you want to change their support plan. But take the money that could be saved on the assessment thing and provide some more services, maybe to address the waiting list or to increase wages for DSPs. I just think there's better ways to use that money than to assess someone like my son or this young woman that was talking about her physical disability.
Yes, great point. That issue has come up. It hasn't been addressed, but I know it's been discussed. Amy might know more, but that's a great question and a great story. So I would encourage you to share that. And we have some other ones in the chat too. Eric talked about student attendance law. We have looked into that with the law that passed this past session, and certain exemptions that there are some, but we need to be more clear on what those are. So thank you for bringing that up, Eric. And that would be a great question. And Nancy talked about more supports for students with multiple diagnoses, especially what includes behaviors.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing those.
just a quick update, Eric. We actually did talk to Representative Chad Ingalls, who was on the Make Your Mark conference last week's legislative panel, and he was disappointed that there are schools are, I guess, strictly interpreting the law. They thought they had addressed issues related to kids that need to go for PT, OT, ABA, something like that, regularly, so that maybe it's a weekly absence, and that some schools are no longer excusing those. So I think that's a really important question to ask your legislators this year, because they're going to be doing something related to the attendance laws to clean it up, I think, this year. So you definitely want to make sure that's in their thought process. And that's definitely a state level issue, whereas some of these other ones are both congressional and state. Anybody else have ideas? We are going to share these with people in case they want to piggyback on your ideas.
I just have one, Amy, and that's what you were talking about for student excused absences. If you're gonna use letters, tell us what those mean.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That'd be the only thing I would add.
Kristen, I love that you always call me on that, because I get into that world at physical therapy, occupational therapy, and applied behavior analysis. And I appreciate you always doing that, because I need to remember that.
And Deb put in the chat, does anyone know if schools are not required to educate students until the age of 21? That did not change. I don't, If a student is on an IEP, they are supposed to be educated until 21 or stay in the school.
I was on an IEP, but I graduated at 18, I think it was.
Yeah, it's a choice.
I
I don't,
think
if
it
you've heard,
depends what services you need.
if you've heard something different, Deb, or if it's something local has come up, please let us know. Yeah, Judy said if they have unmet needs, that they're entitled. At the federal level, there was some discussion about whether it was 21 or 22. But that has not even been resolved yet. So if that comes up again, we'll let you know.
Definitely. Well, you ready to move on to the,
Yeah, thanks for all the questions, you guys. It's great.
still put them in the chat if you think of it while we're moving on.
Yes. So we just had our Make Your Mark conference last week. Seems like it was just yesterday. We had record attendance. Thanks for any of you who were there and made it such a success. We had a great legislative panel that Amy pulled together, and we had great questions from the audience for that. We never have enough time for that one. I think we're thinking next year we're going to make it longer. We say that, and then we try to be cognizant of the legislators' time who come, because they travel to come to this too. But they had great answers to questions and were really responsive to the audience. So it was a very successful conference overall. And many of you on this call, I know, were part of it that made it happen. So we thank you for that. We were able to present a Disability Champion Award to Senator Pam Yoakum, who is retiring from the legislature after 31 years. And she's been a real champion and a huge voice for the disability community, especially parents of children with intellectual disabilities, like her own daughter. So that was great. And then we presented the Mia Peterson Self Advocate Award to Casey Wilkinson, who is from the Iowa City area, and learned more about her and her advocacy efforts. And you'll be hearing more about her, and we'll do a feature on her also in our newsletter. So great time was had by all. And right after, and we had some great breakout sessions too, and a few actually involved employment issues. And then right after the Make Your Mark conference, Judy Worth, who I know many of you know from the University of Iowa, USED, and her team put together a disability employment summit. And she is here to tell us some of the outcomes from that summit. So thanks for joining us today, Judy.
You bet. And for those of you who know me, know that I sat on the DD Council for a chunk of time, and I have to respond to something that's out here, because I do think this is an advocacy issue. I think, Deb, your comment about children being entitled to children with an IEP being entitled to special education till the age of 21. There's a real push-pull here, because school districts are being penalized for students who stay in school until the age of 21 if they don't have clearly identified unmet needs. And every student who stays causes school districts who well-intended intend to keep those students to provide quality transition in situations where they become identified as schools in need. And so this is an area that I think has to be somewhere reconciled. So this is entirely different than what I came here to talk about, but since a portion of my job is spent doing that, and I recognize that this push and pull is really there. And so I think it merits more discussion at some juncture amongst this group. So sorry to weigh in on something I didn't come to talk about, but those of you who know me know I can't help myself. First off, we want to, my team and several of my partners are here in crime, are here with us today. So feel free to jump in. Iowa USET has been taking part for the past 2 years in the Iowa Blueprint for Change, serving as kind of a backbone agency. And one of the things that we wanted to do in conjunction with Make Your Mark is assure that the opinions and perspectives of family members and people with lived experience were heard, and that as we talk about changing a system, we don't want to change a system for the sake of the system. We want to change it so it's better for us, for people, for families, for area businesses who employ them. Okay, so I want to share with you a couple things that we got. We had some fun. And again, we do appreciate the DD Council and Capture in allowing us to take part in this. And tell me if I share the right thing. But we asked people, one, what's their dream job? And we put together a word cloud. And you're going to see there's a whole array of things there that people shared with us, everywhere from, you know, teachers, nurses, advocates, a welder to cleaning, you know, because the most important thing we can do in the lives of all of us is talk about what is it that we want to do. We followed up with the question of, why is work important? And I encourage you to throw it in the chat. Why is work important to you? Because for people with disabilities, it's just as important. Okay, and I loved seeing, you know, in a word cloud, things get bigger based on the number of times it's repeated, you know, being part of the community, money, that's why I work, independence, being able to contribute, confidence, the adventure. I love whoever put the adventure, you know, because our work is an adventure every day. And then, what were the barriers? What are the barriers? And these are important for us to know at the policy level and at the actual level, at the personal level. Okay. And as you look through that, you go, oh my goodness, yes. And these things this information we gathered from folks during the conference. So people who came by our booth filled it out, and I felt really good about the information we gathered there. And our hope is to be able to share this with the Iowa Division of Vocational Rehabilitation and RSA, the Iowa Blueprint for Change, to begin to fabricate a system that works better. Okay, and this led us to, after the conference, you guys were awesome. You let us use some space and AV and everything else. We asked individuals to please share with us what they felt was going to be important. And we looked at it from the policy perspective, from the provider level, and from what needs to happen in the lives of people with disabilities and their families to help make things happen. And it was really interesting. 4 key themes came out, and it was across all areas. One was communication, that our system needs to communicate better. Okay, that policy makers need to talk to families, need to talk to people with disabilities, businesses need to be talking, that we need to have a common dialogue. Okay, the second thing was transportation. Great, let's give people jobs, but how are we going to get them there? And so again, we need some policy changes. We need to be creative in terms of how we offer transportation options to people. And finally, we also have to prepare people to be ready to get ready to work, develop the mobility skills for those people who can drive, to get their licenses, to help people learn how to access things like Uber, Lyfts, and for things like Uber and Lyfts to become more accessible to individuals with disabilities. And then we talked about innovative funding. And that, again, crossed all levels, from creating reimbursement rates that would make it so that agencies can afford to pay direct support professionals professional wages. The same thing DD Council tackled last year and kept pushing out. Thank you for working on that. Also in creating apprenticeships and developing the skills of our direct support professionals, which should include people with disabilities as well as those without. Okay. Innovative funding strategies. One of the things that came up that I thought was brilliant, I need to learn more about, was self-funded employment, where they apparently in Canada, in Norway, they're doing some things like this. And it also includes self-employment. You know that people with disabilities can be highly successful in their own businesses with the proper supports. And then the last key area that came across was benefits. How do we deal with the impact of working on Social Security, the ability to be able to be married and still have assets if you have a disability? How do we address that? Much of the stuff that Josh Turek dealt with in terms of work without worry last year, as well as some bigger, broader issues. Bottom line, it all came down to this: creating the notion at the policy level. And we're not just talking in terms of the legislative, we're talking HHS, that vocational rehabilitation, organizationally, personally, that the first option for each and every Iowan is that they're going to work. That we assume everyone works until either they communicate they don't want to. Okay. And so those were our key things. And we are eternally grateful to the DD Council and to you all for helping us to do that. To gather that information and gain those insights from people who live this every day. If you would like more information on the Iowa Blueprint for Change, I'm going to include the website in the chat and encourage you to participate. There are opportunities through large meetings that meet every other month called the Collective that help guide this process. I would be remiss if I didn't share with you that, as you said, we've served as a backbone for the past 2 years. We will not be doing that here in the future because it made more sense for the Iowa Division of Vocational Rehabilitation to hold that internally. It will enhance efficiencies, we believe, as well as help institutionalize it where it needs to be. But having said that, I'm not wearing any hat right now. All of us need to engage. All of us need to engage and share our thoughts, our experiences, and our opinions. And I encourage, the DD Council has been intimately part of this from the get-go. I encourage each and every one of you who are here today to check that website out, go to the Collective, and share your opinion, and share your ideas, and think way outside the box of what will it take for all Iowans to have the opportunity to work if they want to. Questions? Thoughts?
You know what I love about this, Judy, is it is not a partisan issue. It is something that cuts across rural, urban, suburban, Republican, Democrat, middle of the road. It is so common sense. And I think it has the ability to really engage a lot of legislators on this issue once they figure out how to do it. I mean, there's a plan there. I just think the will is there on all sides. So,
And the coordination, you know, Amy, you're so right. Employment is not a partisan issue. You can sit on either side of the aisle and it speaks to you. In terms of, you know, I'm going to put quotations around it, people who are social liberals. This is about engaging and empowering all citizens. For fiscal conservatives, this is about Iowa's economic development and economic opportunities. And it is the one area that I think speaks universally. We all know work. Second thing that people ask us, what's your name? What do you do? So, Deb, I see your hands up.
I just have a couple of comments that Iowa Rehabilitation, I hesitate to have it go to them only because I don't want it to go onto some shelf. So if you have some more ideas of how to specifically advocate that they continue to act on these, what you've already done, and go forward with it. And secondly, I see a couple other people have commented on the not going to school till a student is 21. And if you have any more comments that you have time for today, I would appreciate it.
You're trying to get me fired, right, Deb?
I am
In terms-
not.
in-
I am just glad to have people speaking honestly about these issues that affect so many Iowans, including my daughter. That it's very frustrating when people say, when she was in school, you know, she needs to be ready for the adult world, but now we want to cut that short. And now they say everybody needs to work. You're expected to work, but there's no openings to get in the door or for transportation, etc. So it's nice to have adults in the what you guys do, helping us continue to raise our kids, I guess, is what it comes down to. So thank you.
Well, Deb, I'm gonna, in terms of, please hop on the website that I shared with you for the Iowa Blueprint for Change. And I did put that in there, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because then I think you can join the collective meetings, share your perspective. And if that doesn't work for you, just, I'll put my contact information in here, reach out to me and I will get you linked to the right people for that, okay? Because I think the voice, our systems people are very committed to trying to do good things and the right things. The difficulty is sometimes what's best for the whole is not always best for the individual. And sometimes rules are created because of one situation. And so I think please reach out and keep influencing the system because we have to. We have to deal with transportation. We have to deal with a shortage of direct support professionals in the employment arena. And we have to get creative as to what we can do to help everyone who wants to work. Okay, you had a question?
Not a question. I just wanted to share that my son participated in the Take Your Legislator to Work event a couple of years ago that the DD Council coordinated. And I mean, it was wonderful. His state rep and state senator both went to his place of work, employment while he was there. They both gave very positive responses about that. And they not only saw, you know, what it meant to Joel, but they saw what it meant to the workplace and the other employees. So I would just encourage everybody, you know, if our sons or daughters are working, it's another outreach to policymakers. Come see where my son or daughter's working.
Amen. Because I tell you what, every person who works, if you share that story, there are many parents who are afraid of their children working. Share the story of the success. Share that story with other businesses. Share that story with our policymakers. That communication component there, that everyone needs to be talking. I'm a grassroots sort of person versus kind of a system sort of person. Every person who we hear about them working opens the door for other people to go, well, if you can do it, I can do it. And that's going to be, I think, one of the most important things that we can do, of course, always from my perspective and bias. I'll let Amy deal with the politicians, but I want to deal with people one by one. And I think that's something that we can do easily.
And I think sometimes folks are afraid to ask because they might get told no, or the legislator or whoever it is can't do it. But okay, then that's on them, but make the ask. And I was surprised actually. And they coordinated together, so they both went at the same time. So yeah, just ask. That's all you can do.
Well, and in the immortal words of Ross Perot on this election year, is he trained all of his salespeople that you will hear no. No doesn't mean no unless you accept it to mean no. It often means later. keep going back and going back and going back again, because they will hear and see, and will say it at the right moment in the right way to the right person, and magic will happen.
Love it.
Love it too, Judy. Thank you so much for sharing that and for bringing up a number of issues here that are really important for us to consider and to discuss, and especially from the summit, how we can work those into our policy priorities. So really appreciate you sharing that and for being on today, Judy. You're always great. And Kay, what a great way to transition us to our next slide. That was a perfect segue. And usually we have Joel's picture of that time that he invited his legislators to work when we promote the Take Your Legislator to Work campaign, but we happen to use two different ones today. And you're so right, people are a little bit hesitant when you think about asking your legislator to visit you at work. So we tried to make this campaign sound a little bit more fun this October. So we called it Do My Job. And maybe it's fun to say, hey, I want you to come visit me at work and see if you can do my job. And it doesn't have to be literal, but it was kind of a play on, some other celebrity TV show kind of things. So hopefully it might spark some of you to ask your legislators to visit you at work, or your son or daughter, or your clients. And it doesn't just have to be for individuals. This campaign could be for service providers to invite legislators to their workplaces. And see how you work with individuals with disabilities to help them to work. That would be an awesome educational campaign. And I know that some of you have done this before. I see some of you who are on this call who have invited legislators to your offices or your day habs, or visiting with your clientele while they're at your location, and invite you to do that too. The information for this campaign is on our website. It has been pushed out. If it wasn't this week, it'll probably be today, because it was going out this week on how to get involved. And there's kind of a how-to on how you can get involved. So we just encourage you all to join in, and let's get some great stories about, just like Kay's, about and her son Joel, about how legislators visited their constituents at work. That would be awesome. Also here today to talk about more about what advocates are doing during October is Zach Meacham with our Allies and Advocacy Group. So I'm going to ask him to tell us about their activities. Thanks for being here today, Zach.
Yeah, thank you for having me. First off, hello all. Thank you for being here and listening. As it was said, I am working with Allies and Advocacy on a lot of different things. But for those of you who don't know what Allies and Advocacy is, we are a disability advocacy and disability rights organization that is made up of and ran by people with disabilities. So we really believe that if our organization is ran by people with disabilities, that we will have the most impact on disability rights in Iowa, because we have lived experience. Our motto, or our mission statement, is that all Iowans, regardless of ability, have the right to be mobile, active, healthy, and financially self-sustaining. And right now, a big part of what we're doing as an organization is actually addressing that financially self-sustaining piece. We're working a lot on employment and trying to make it easier for Iowans with disabilities to be able to have the resources they need to get a job. Obviously, that involves a lot of things. But one of the biggest things we're focusing on right now, based on Representative Turret's former bill, Work Without Worry, is that we're really trying to address uh, set limits and income cap. So we want to make sure that Iowans with disabilities can work without having to worry about losing those benefits, and they can be self-employed. And how we're working on that, be employed. How we're working on that is we are first working on a series of op-ed pieces, letters to the editor at places like newspapers around Iowa. And those will be written by working people with disabilities. And they'll just be talking about all of the barriers that are in place that make it hard for those of us that do work to work. And talking about how that can be made easier. And all of this will build up to a press conference post-election where these working Iowans with disabilities will be sharing their stories, and then calling our legislators and our state government to make it easier on us, make it to where we can work without having to worry about losing our benefits. So that way more Iowans can work.
I know
That was a lot.
self-included, like Zach saying, that want to work, but we don't even pursue it because we'll lose our benefits.
Right.
Spot on. And I was trying to explain that to my parents last night. Dad's like, what do you mean your assets and your benefits? And I had to explain it to him. My dad's in his 80s. I shouldn't have to explain this, but I did.
Right. Well, and that's a big part of what we're working on is we just want to educate people. We really believe that there hasn't been movement on this issue because people that aren't directly affected by it have no idea that it's even a problem. And so we really want to get out in the public and just share those stories and this information with people. So maybe we can get some pressure on government to do something about it.
Zach, and you just, emphasized everything I was going to summarize here, and that this is really about education. And Judy emphasized that too in her summary of the Disability Summit. And what came out of it is, the four issues that came up seem so, I don't want to say simple, maybe obvious, but it's just not recognized that these are barriers and they're problems, and we really need to educate lawmakers and government agencies that what's happening in one agency is creating a barrier in what they're trying to do in another in some instances. So it's more complicated than it looks, unfortunately. And that's why this is going to take some work. And I appreciate that, we have so many different entities working on this, from advocates to, the DD Council can work on this as an organization, but we need advocates, service providers, state agencies, everybody to coming together, legislators especially, coming together to move these issues forward. And it is going to really take education and a lot of people telling their stories and making an ask to legislators and members of Congress. So thank you for that, Zach, for that update. And we look forward to what the allies are pulling together. They've been working really hard on this. And it's really been great to see their growth and their growth in understanding that this is going to take some effort as far as the educational efforts. So thanks, Zach, and thank Judy, and I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. And hopefully this will get people excited about taking action on this issue. I really feel like, as you said, it is, as you both said, education, and there are many legislators who, quite frankly, don't love public assistance programs, but this is a different take on this issue. And so I think it's really important for people to talk about it with their legislators and really cut through some of that bias that they have already included, because they don't work on these issues the same or as much. I'm going to just put up my last slide because we just wanted to share a few dates with you that are coming up. Our next capital chat will be November 1st. We're kind of combining October and November because of the holidays in November. And we can talk about what happened with employment. We'll probably still have a pretty big focus on employment. Either at the November 1st or the December 13th capital chat, we'll talk about our the DD Council's public policy priorities for 2025. I also wanted to note that on November 13th in the evening, there will be a webinar on special education and helping families navigate the resources for their students. So for those of you that were talking about special education, that might be an important one. Assuming that will also be taped, Carlin, and available? Yes.
Yes.
So if that doesn't work for your schedule, and we have our legislative reception at the state capitol on January 29th, 2 to 4, and allies will be having their legislative reception after that. So just wanted to get those dates on your calendar so you had them. And we are at our 3 minutes before our time. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. And as always, if you have questions, reach out to us, Carlin or I, and we're happy to respond. Anything
And I
more?
just added 2 more things to the chat. Sorry,
Oh.
Amy. That I forgot to mention. There's 2 events. Well, there's more actually, but Voc Rehab and Iowa Workforce Development is also working on National Disability Employment Month. And they have a kickoff and some webinars that are for employers for creating inclusive work environments. So I put the information on that in the chat in case you have employers that you would like to send those to. That would be awesome. Or you're invited to attend those also.
Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it. And thanks to our interpreter. We appreciate you.
Have a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.